Welcome to another episode of the Words to Your Mother podcast, where we talk openly and honestly with the goal of normalizing mental health conversations until even your mom gets it. Up to this point, we've had mental health professionals and I guess you could say pro-adjacent guests join us. And I'm excited that today's show is more of a courageous conversation. I was able to talk to Shimmersing about her lived experience with postpartum depression, suicidal ideation, PTSD, Hashimoto's disease, and even got into some of her favorite geekdoms. I'm excited to bring you more of these kinds of conversations in addition to the actual pro conversations in the future. And until next time, I hope you enjoy. I'm super excited, you guys, because it's our first Relatably Unfiltered stream that we've done. So we've had guests in the past. They've been mental health professionals. So this is just kind of a let's share our story kind of interview. And I'm really excited to have Shimmersing with us today. So this is Shimmer over here on my whatever direction it is on your screen. Her pronouns are she, her. She's a married mama of one 4-year-old goblin, which I love because, you know, mine's a goblin too. And she's a writer and a maternal mental health advocate. And she's trying not to feel too guilty about all the privilege she's carrying and instead trying to do something positive with gratitude, which is one of our favorite things here is to say, you know, attitude of gratitude. So that's perfect. She's severely anxious, was hospitalized twice after her son's birth for suicidal ideation and PTSD symptoms. She smokes marijuana for both therapeutic and recreational reasons and loves cosplay and Star Wars. So welcome. Thank you for being here with us today. I am super excited to go through all of this with you.
Thank you. I am really grateful for the opportunity, and there's trying to be grateful right up front. And thank you for having me, and I hope that this all continues to go very well for the show.
Yeah, absolutely. So we met through the Geek Therapy Discord, and let's just right off the bat talk about what your favorite game or fandom is and why.
So I started playing Star Wars: The Old Republic at the very beginning. I don't think I was one of the beta players, but my husband was, and he was the one who said, "Here, why don't you try this?" And I had been very like, "Ooh, I don't know if I need to do that." And he was right, and here we are carrying on with, I think, the 9th year of the game, and we just got a new. Here I am. I'm not doing a promotion. I'm sorry, it just came up, but we just got an expansion for the first time in a couple of years in Star Wars, and there's a lot of Star Wars right now, so that kind of is making it really very exciting right now. So,
yeah, absolutely. Well, I know we have some very big Star Wars fans in chat. I don't know if everyone is a Star Wars game. So there's a Star Wars game aspect to it. Is it like a RPG game or what kind of game? I haven't played it. I like Star Trek. Don't hate me.
That's okay. It's totally fine. So Star Wars: The Old Republic is an MMO that takes place about 3,000-ish years before the original trilogy-ish era. And it's in spirit, I think, supposed to be kind of a follow-up to Knights of the Old Republic, which was an earlier game that's very cherished. I think I probably just angered somebody. I'm sorry. There are people who are like, no, it's not the spiritual successor. It's not any successor. I was like, it's okay. It's all good. It's all Star Wars. So that game has connected me actually. Initially to Discord, so being on Discord at all is a result of in that game, and putting together guilds and finding family, which is gonna sound corny as fuck, but it's really, really true.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's I'm a big fan of MMORPGs because a lot of the people actually in my community, I met through RuneScape, and that's one of those things that, one of my best online friends is Fee, and I wouldn't have met her if it weren't for RuneScape. So it's you really can find this community to connect to through gaming, and I just think that's really cool. Hey, Slay, we don't hate people even if they are Star Trek lovers.
It's all just have a good time in space. It's a really nice idea.
Yeah, absolutely.
So having a community of folks that grasp that, and when the fandom is hitting really hard, like it is lately, you'd be like, oh, I got to talk about all the spoilers, and you've got beyond just like, hey, let's do a raid. It's well beyond that. They were the first group of people that I actually talked to about the Hashimoto's diagnosis, which was just this last week. So in addition to my blood relatives, that was they were the first people to kind of know about that. So that was. It's easy to share with that part of my family. So
yeah, well, I don't know about you, but sometimes I find it's really easy to share with an online community before you can even share with like a face-to-face community. Sometimes with some things just feel so heavy and you want to get them off your chest, but it's like, I don't want to unload on my coworkers right now until I'm able to say it like without busting into tears or whatever it is emotionally that you're struggling with. Hey, speaking of Fee, I was just saying that we met through a game, and then I'm really glad that we did, because we wouldn't have known each other. And you're one of my best online friends, so it's that connection is a real thing, and I'm very grateful for it. But yeah, so yay! I'm glad that Star Wars brought you to Discord. That's awesome, because that's how we met. We wouldn't have met if it weren't for that. So here we are. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah.
There's so much that I say to y'all that I don't say to my parents. Yeah.
So much.
Yes. So
I was like, what if my dad sees this later? Oh God, he doesn't care. He's not gonna be on the internet. He's not going to be on Twitter. Oh my God.
Right.
What if?
Yeah, there is mailing feet tissues. Aw. Y'all are so sweet. So this sounds really weird and slightly unrelated, but as we are aware in the community, we have started asking our mental health professional guests what their favorite serial killer is, because we found that they have a love of true crime. Typically, I think I've only had one guest who said, I really don't have that passion in me. And so I thought that it might be fun to do this with the Relatably Unfiltered chats as well, and just ask you, do you have a favorite serial killer?
Okay. I'm also going to admit that I'm not one of those people who is into true crime, and I feel like a little bit of a failure, but because I'm supposed to you're supposed to be into that, but no. I think if I just sat down and watched some stuff, I would be immediately sucked in, and it would all be over, and I would never get anything done ever again. So
that's valid.
It's almost a safety, but I thought about it a little bit because I thought the question was so interesting, and it just feels predictable, but it's Hannibal Lecter. I mean. He's just he's such a cool guy, and the two super great actors are the guys who got to play him, and I think that works out. Yeah. In a certain sort of way. So
yeah, that's perfect. Yes.
I don't know what that says about me as a person. But.
That's just one of the fun questions that we get.
Yeah.
If I start the thing, I'll never be able to stop. That is so true. There are a lot of things that, I wish I had never downloaded TikTok, because I downloaded TikTok and I'll just endlessly watch stuff. And then I'm like, oh my God, it's 1:00 in the morning and I just needed to go to bed.
I meant to do this. And then I just got weird.
Yep. She's a TikTok addict, unsubbed. Well, I mean, so I only look at it once a week, because by the time I'm done looking at it, I'm just like, I can't do this for another. I've TikToked myself out of it.
It seems very dangerous.
Yeah, no kidding.
But you can get it secondhand, and somebody will post it on Twitter or Tumblr, and and then you don't get quite so stuck. But so.
Well, the problem is my husband has TikTok too, and he'll be like, "Did you see the one where?" And then I have to go find it, and then I'm on TikTok, and I'm like, "Dang it, this is not what I meant to do tonight."
It's all over now.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. So you mentioned to me that you're very passionate about maternal mental health and have experienced PTSD, suicidal ideation after your son's birth. We talked recently about postpartum depression, as well as some of the what we'll call like normal emotions, right, that new moms go through right after birth, and what's not normal versus what is normal, and just kind of the fact that nobody talks about this stuff. Do you want to just share some or all of that story with us?
I will try not to turn it into the entire thing, but
you're fine.
So it does tie all together, and I promise that all things will tie back into this really relatedly. So we got pregnant. We had one miscarriage before my son's pregnancy. So just to put that out there, because that's a super duper important part of this. That was something that was like the one thing that I sort of had mentally prepared for, I think, along this whole thing. Knowing I came into, looking at pregnancy and childbirth, as a person who had experienced mild anxiety and depression. So none of this was new. When negative things had come up, we handled it what we thought was pretty well. So we knew from the very beginning that because I had anxiety and depression in my background, as well as high blood pressure, it was going to be a high risk pregnancy from jump. Mm-hmm. So that was one of those things that we sort of went in with a terrible attitude of like, it's probably gonna be. It was just weird. There's one particular part of that happens, much later on our trip to the hospital, when right before my diagnosis was preeclampsia, and we kind of looked at each other driving down to our hospital and said, we're not just going to go to the hospital. We're having this baby now. Like, it's pretty obvious. They had not, they had not formally diagnosed everything, but, we just knew in that way, I think. So, so the pregnancy itself was uncomplicated as uncomplicated as a complicated pregnancy would be. Mm-hmm. Like all the bad things happened in the order we expected them to happen, which was kind of a weird thing. And so when it came to my blood pressure becoming just untenable, it was on the night that I was admitted to the hospital, it was 200 something over 119.
Oh my gosh.
So, yeah. And there's a weird thing about, like, I was very quick to be taking my blood pressure, because I always took my blood pressure every day. So it was
right.
We saw this pattern and kind of, and then yet we still sort of felt in the long run a strange disassociation from the whole thing, and just we knew it was a high risk situation. We knew it was a possibility. Why had we not ever been sat down by my OB and said, here, if this goes sideways, this is what it's going to be like, because mm-hmm. we did not expect, we didn't know what the treatment was, which is going to be a magnesium drip, and basically, that incapacitates you until, which, sounded really nice at the time, because I had to pee every 10 minutes for like the last 2 months already, and I was only 32 weeks pregnant. So I was like, oh, you know what? A catheter sounds awesome. So there was this really weird, very, very strange sort of moments of humor in this absolutely terrifying situation. So, and that coming, that was, the birth part, which was just, that is a little hard to talk about, because a lot of it I don't actually remember. I was not there, but the moments that I do remember are very, very icily and wonderfully clear. Some of them, one of my best memories is when we had told everyone what the baby's sex was, and we were like, mm-hmm. As much as we're like, we didn't have a gender reveal party. Right. We're not that, not that level.
Yeah. Well, and 4 years ago, those weren't a huge thing.
No, it's like,
right.
Recently, and they're like, let's do it as crazy as possible. And it's like, okay, just slow down, please. But yeah, so that and that was funny. The weekend he was born was the weekend that most of our family and friends were already in town because that was supposed to be his baby shower. So
Oh, wow.
that was the joke. He was like, "Oh yeah, he just wanted to be here for the party."
Right. Didn't want to miss it.
Yeah, I didn't want to miss that part. So, unfortunately, everything was still postponed. So, but I remember a moment in the surgical suite, just really, a C-section is really weird because it's very detached. Like, I mean, in a literal sense, because there's a sheet and whatever. And we were in a high-risk situation, so we didn't have that sort of option for, oh, hey, we want the clear sheet so I can see what's going on. They were like, no, just lay down, we're gonna do the thing. And so it was an emergency situation. He was no longer receiving what he needed from my body, which isn't, like, that's a whole other podcast, but whatever. But that moment when we had not told anybody his name, that was the one thing we managed to kind of keep a secret. We were terrible about, hey, we're pregnant 6 weeks in, and it's a boy as soon as we know, and then, like, we will keep something secret, and it was his name. And when I first heard, and I remember this like I can feel it, I remember hearing him cry for the first time and just going, his name is Ben, his name is Ben. And I was like, going, everybody in the room, his name is Ben, his name is Ben. And out of that whole strange situation and how many drugs I was on, and that I can remember that, and I'm like, and I'm so thankful for that of all the strange moments, that was one of the ones of clarity. So it's so that's how Ben was born. and he did great. He left the NICU. He was 3 pounds 1 ounce.
That's so small.
He was like the tiniest peanut. And it's really funny, actually. This is terrible to say. He looked just like his cousin, who was 12 and just gangly, and like, because he didn't have, he had 10 fingers and 10 toes, but he looked like a little fur all over. It was really but he was the cutest peanut. And so, so he was just the picture of him just laying on the examination table, that, in the surgical room, was like, it's just, and he's so tiny, this big. Yeah. Like, I can't see that. But he was, and even at that, I was like, that was supposed to come out of where later? When he gets bigger? No. So that was how that went. But, so yeah, that was kind of, that was all up until that point, not as sort of traumatic as it would become later in hindsight. So, after that point, I have zero recollection of the next 18 hours except waking up and asking when I could see him. And at that point, I really hadn't slept in like 4 days because they'd been monitoring me and being monitored for basically a stroke you get the blood pressure cuff every 15 minutes, and you're like, oh, I'm going to sleep. And no, you're not. So, and then we're going to do an abdominal surgery on you. Oh, okay. And then we're going to be like, yeah, that's going to be fine. And so it was not fine for me. Ben did great in the NICU. I, on the other hand, developed abdominal hematoma that put enough pressure on my wound that my incision opened, and I had a bleeding open incision. So
wow,
that's fun.
Yeah, that's not fun.
Yeah, it's not fun at all. And so if you're a sports fan, I guess much, then you might have heard something similar happen to Serena Williams. Even though, and this is another one of those, hi, can we listen to Black women in hospital settings? Because that's really important. And when they don't get listened to, they die, and it's not okay.
Yeah.
But it was the same, similar circumstances, except she has a different condition than I do. So it sucks, whether you're a tennis star or, a teacher from Colorado, it sucks. And the problem being that it took actually, I don't have a good estimate on actually how long it took to get a proper diagnosis on it, to get them to do an MRI and, understand what was going on. And,
wow.
And even despite that, there was no wound treatment at that point. I was discharged from the hospital with doctors telling me, yeah, a little bit of blood coming out of your wound is okay. And I'm like, this is not a little bit of blood.
Yeah.
It was, and that was, this was when we got home that night. Sorry, I hope this is still trigger for blood if that's really bad for you. So
yep,
anyways,
that's
content warning.
Fair.
I feel like it comes along with the territory a little bit, but I'm trying. Yeah, I want to be supportive. I was bleeding onto the floor, as I was trying to get a shower once I got home, and it was. And my husband is trying to hold me up, and
oh my gosh,
it's really just it's very awful. And we went back to the hospital that same night, and I was readmitted. I still didn't get the wound looked after. That came along a little bit later. So that was really when, I had gone back to the hospital that night. So the same night we were discharged, after this weird 3 or 4, I'm still not sure how many days it was of, walking with the wheelchair back and forth to the NICU, and pumping every 3 hours and setting timers on my phone like I couldn't get enough control over anything. So, which was exactly what was happening. So,
yeah.
And all of that came out to, be this thing when everybody finally got home and was healthy, with air quotes. I was like, this is all really bad. And, and I was diligently going to doctor's appointments and baby appointments and baby groups and shit. And I would be coming back down the highway on the way home, and, it would be okay if I just went off the overpass, that would be okay. That would be fine. And of course, and the whole conversation, you have this thought and you're going, that's fucking crazy, and I don't want to do that. And that's follow-up. It's like, don't want to do that. And it's in the car. And oh my God, how can I think that kind of thing? Was like, I'm a terrible human being because I just thought this thing while my kid is in the car.
Right.
What the fuck? So you just break yourself down with that the whole thing. So that is what my sort of suicidal ideation looked like, or it would be okay if I didn't wake up tomorrow, and that's and then you go, oh my God, how can I think that when I take care, why am I a terrible human being? And that, I'm, not worth being around despite, it's, and I know we're talking about sort of very familiar territory, but it felt so out of place from everything that has been projected about motherhood for so long. About and so many people would be like, oh, your baby's home, your baby's healthy. And I'm like, he was 2 months early, that's and we felt like, that the platitudes were very empty. And, and I know not, in the being given, but we didn't have a place to put that, I guess, sort of. So yeah, that's sort of how that went. It went really badly with just the presentation of postpartum depression and anxiety and that whole wealth of things presents a little bit differently than the classic cases. So, the typical whatever, the not you just had a baby thing. But so for me, it was very, I spent 50 days of getting up very diligently every morning and taking a shower and putting on makeup and putting on jewelry and putting on a cute little outfit with soft pants so that I could hold my baby and my nursing bras and everything, and going to the NICU and being out of my mind terrified for 8 hours at a time.
Yeah.
And all I could think of at that time was like, oh, this is normal, you know. And nobody was sort of telling me. It's weird to say nobody was telling us otherwise, because the extent of us being told otherwise than this is the way it is was, hey, you should watch out for postpartum depression. That is literally a line that a nurse said to me, and I not at all to say anything bad about nurses, but like, watch out.
Right. You know? Yeah. That's
It was not. I was like, I'm thinking about, you know, I was still trying to translate grams into pounds and things, and just having there was a lot going on. So I was still, and probably when we had that conversation, I was probably still actively bleeding. So that open wound that had occurred, it was not I did not get proper wound treatment, which ended up being packing the wound for a couple of weeks, until 10 days postpartum. So I had gone home, come back to the hospital, gone home again, and still come back to the hospital every day to the NICU to see my tiny baby while I was bleeding, and I had you know, abdominal pads that I was wearing, so that, you know, that they on the wound, so that I wouldn't have blood all over my clothes. And when I finally bled through one of those in the NICU, I said, I think I better go and talk to someone.
Yeah, right.
So, I mean, this was really in the midst of all the very baby-friendly hospital bullshit. And I do not hesitate to say bullshit, because it's bullshit, and it's hurting women and hurting birth givers. And yeah. So, yeah, that was where we were. And it was everything was in flames, and I kept asking people, what was the phrase that I got? It was something about, don't offer somebody a glass of water when they're on fire.
Right.
Like, and I kept going, I think that I'm not right to people, and they would offer me a glass of water. And that's not really, you know. So it got to this point of like, my husband was afraid to let me be alone, and not. That's a really terrible thing to say, and so right. You know, the father of my child was afraid for all of us, and it felt really bad. So, and it was becoming, you know, an issue that a lot of people deal with, you know, because this was well past the point at which he had any leave left, family leave, which did not really exist much at all. It was vacation and sick time that he took, and he was still working while he was in the hospital with me. So it was very weird. That is a advocacy that I want to do with that a little bit right now. So that I'm trying to stay on time, like I'm looking to.
You're totally fine.
So yeah, there was, and despite all of that, you know, there were, you know, postpartum mood disorders. You may have had a traumatic birth, you may have had a perfect birth. There was a really interesting split in a therapy group I was in later, where half of us had birth experiences and half of us had like perfect magical births. And we were like so supportive of each other. Like, it was just like, oh, you know, all of us who had been, you know, the women who had the perfect births were like, oh, I'm so glad, you know, or we're so sorry, this is really, it sucks. And we're like, no, it's a good thing that somebody has a good experience, because otherwise, you know, it doesn't.
Right.
That isn't, like, I think we all needed that part of the universe to even out a little bit at the time. So that was, you know, so that was what a lot of my therapy then that I went through with Children's Hospital of Colorado. It's actually their program. And they continue to do this program called Healthy Expectations. And it's very successful. And I truly believe that it's one of the things that saved my life. And
that was the group therapy piece of it was part of this program?
Yeah. The entire program involves one-on-one therapy, medication therapy, and then this group therapy as well as developmental, stuff that they would do with kiddos when, and we have this wonderful full staff of people, and so like that sort of being available was, I don't think there are probably, I don't know what the rate of programs existing like that are, but it's not very high, and it's not at every house.
No,
which is what it should be.
Yeah, it's not very high here. I can tell you that.
Yeah. So, and even within our own city, when I was struggling, we went back to my birth hospital, and they did not have a psych facility. They did not know what to do with we had the weirdest experiences there too. Like my going there, and they're like, they've been watching me, and so I was in one of those bare rooms, psych watch, but my husband and my baby were in there with me because what? And and I'm nursing him, and trying to tell people about how I think I'm gonna die, and and they're like, we just watched you feed that kid, but we need you to do a test to make sure you're not high. And I'm like, okay, and I was not that, and to walk down the thing, I was not using marijuana at the time, but I was just like, they were so apologetic. It was really funny. Like the nurse who was like, I am so sorry that I have to ask you to do this because it's the dumbest fucking thing, but like, so yeah, so this whole pile of these things have added up, over the couple of years, and life continues as it is, and I've had good patches and bad patches since then. In as far as like PTSD, where I'm at now, we're sort of not sure because and this bumps into one of the other questions. I was recently diagnosed with Hashimoto's, and we feel it's very possible that some of the recent flares that I've experienced are kind of just making things really, and so going to the doctor sucks, and so hey, you just got an autoimmune disease, you're going to go to the doctor a lot. So a lot of the PTSD that I have is directly associated with medical trauma. So, the experiences that I had in both hospitals, medical hospital settings, and psychiatric hospital settings. And it was a super mixed bag. I mean, some of those same scenarios were, things that I'm certain saved my life, but other parts of them were a healthy helping of my wanting to take my own life, which was, so it compounds in a way that is very different than before motherhood.
Yeah.
So it becomes a very different thing that way, especially. So, but there are normal emotions, and I did have some of those, and that was really fun. Because they were really cute, because it's like, oh my God, I'm going to cry at this commercial, kind of cute, And it's like,
oh yeah.
You're like, that's okay. That's kind of fun. And I mean, and we had that, I remember one specific experience, the little suburb that we live in of Denver, is like strangely tight knit somehow. And I went onto Facebook going, hey, I need to get a ride to the hospital every day because I'm not allowed to drive yet. And people came out of the woodwork that we never met, like lived down the block or whatever, and they started a meal train for us.
Oh, that's amazing.
Just like, I was like, oh, suburban America's not so bad, I guess. All right, but suddenly, and one woman showed up who had a baby in the NICU, and he was now a toddler, and so she brought over a bag of brand new clothes and toys, and I just absolutely
yes,
I was crying, just like oh, and I mean, like, you should, because that was the nicest fucking thing. Like it was just completely out of, the meal train was like, yes, you're going through a thing, so, feed people. But she's just like, I just brought you a baby gift, here you go. It's like, oh my God, I was seen for like 5 minutes. And that was a really, really big part of, I think, what made the next year so hard was not being seen nor heard. And which is again a thing that I'm going through and have been going through for the last year or so with this diagnosis of Hashimoto's. So it's like everything comes full circle. Oh, somebody starts a Lion King theme. I don't know, just whatever. It's very weird, and I'm processing so much. It was less than a week ago that we got the Hashimoto's diagnosis, and I'm the meme with the guy with the red string, and that's like fucking me right now. I'm like, oh, preeclampsia and Hashimoto's autoimmune disease. There has Crohn's disease, and my other and I do feel a little like that, but
yeah,
it's a little crazy. So yeah, we have some interesting thoughts about how my history of the pregnancies that I had went, and leading to this diagnosis, what those connections are going to be, if we are going to find any, and if we do or not, it doesn't change where we are right now, and that's okay. That was a big sentence with words in it.
Yeah, that same meme, I think my sister posted in the Discord recently with that guy saying, like, these are our holiday plans. And trying to connect everything. But I can definitely see, like, with that history of the difficult pregnancy and just complicated birth and just all of these things that you went through after birth with PTSD and postpartum depression and just all of that, and then going, okay, well, now I have this other thing. I would be looking back going, all right, how does it connect? Because there's got to be a connection somewhere. Like, there has to be something.
Yeah. And I feel like I had this moment of at the very beginning where I was like, okay, I'm still having this moment, let's be really honest. I'm still having this moment of like, oh my God. Like, I mean, I have complained about fatigue for about a decade, and we have stories from like when I was in student teaching, and I would come home at 4:00 and be asleep until my husband came home 2 hours later, and I was just 28, and and I was like, let me do the math on that, hang on. And
I do the same though.
Yeah, and so we're like, was that this? Was this that?
Mm-hmm.
Like 10 years ago, and we knew, and we've done something, and we wouldn't, and I don't want to say we wouldn't be where we are now, because I hope we're at where we're right now. Now is so good, like, I mean, now is definitely where I want to be. This sounds like, yeah, anyways. And so just, but that frustration with what got missed. Did something get missed? And if so, what was it? And if so, and it turns into a very dangerous string of what ifs and should haves, which are no, don't, no, should haves, or you should not, should not.
Don't should on yourself. Yeah.
Don't should on yourself. And that's it. Like, put it on the inside of your whatever, your medicine cabinet. Mm-hmm. That's where I put all the notes that I'm supposed to tell myself.
Yeah.
So that's like, we're in this sort of weird limbo right now. And we have a treatment plan, but it's going to take time, and that feels really hard right now because it's been 4 years, and it feels sometimes like it's been another year. It feels like it's been 4 minutes since the last shitty thing happened. So it's a lot. So it's had a very strange impact. Look, I answered the next question already. You're like, no, we're gonna go back and do the thing.
No, it's totally fine. Well, I'm really glad to hear you talk about suicidal ideation, not in the way of like, I want to, actively kill myself, but more of in a passive way of, if I didn't wake up but that would be okay. Or, if I got into a car wreck, that would be okay. So Fee said, I don't have a kid and haven't had any traumatic events happen to me, but I do have thoughts like that sometimes where it's like, if something horrible happened to me, it would be fine. Then I wouldn't have to think about how tired I am. Like those kinds of things, I feel like people discount as suicidal ideation when they really are. Like those kinds of thoughts definitely need some attention, and they are less, I don't want to say flashy. What's a different term I could say? They are less.
They are passive.
They are.
And I think that's what I mean. But they're. I think people think they're they're sort of normal because it's not. Oh, I want to pick your favorite movie trope ending, but yeah, and so that was just like, why? I have there's a lot of times that I'm like, why but yeah. And I've totally lost the question at this point. So
no, that's okay. Well, I mean, and so I think that there are some normal thoughts of, now I've lost. There are some normal sensational thoughts, right? There are sensational thoughts for sure, but
like, what if I was killed in an asteroid?
Yes. Those kinds of things I think are normal thoughts, but then the non-normal thoughts are I would be okay if I died right now from this thing that could happen in an instant and is a real life situation. Like those are suicidal ideation. I'm glad to hear you talk about them that way, because a lot of the time I think people pass those off as a normal thought and are just like, this is fine. Everybody thinks this way. And it's like, well, not really.
You're like, I mean, and even if everybody did think, like, I'm not sure that's okay. I mean, we understand that, that mental health complications, I'm trying to use like, whatever, but mental health is like something that almost everybody, an issue with your mental health is almost everyone experiences something. Almost everyone experiences. There we go. All right. Those words in that order. And it's not, it's been that part of the stigma that we don't talk about it in ways that are constructive because we don't talk about it, and so it doesn't come up, and we haven't learned constructive ways to talk about it. But we're getting there, and I mean, even in places like, even in legislation, like, they're doing their best to kind of, and I say this, and I know you're like, you mean politicians are doing their best? And I'm like, some of them actually are.
Some of them, yes, absolutely, yeah. Yes.
Yeah. And so generally, I'm speaking of like very local legislators, like in my county, and I'm very proud of the ones that I have had the chance to work with, and but yeah, all of those things, all of those things kind of fitting into the picture, and even so far as how we're trying to talk about maternal mental health, and not just talk about moms, because it's not all about moms. It is, and that's like it is, but it's not. It is about the birth givers who are also patients. The next thing, and let's hope they don't like get super like over the top about it, because it needs to be right.
Yeah,
because we fucked it up for a long time,
right?
And that's why we're the only developed country in the world who has a rising maternal mental maternal mental illness rate, as well as the rising maternal mortality rate, and especially if you're a woman of color, and it should not be that way. So, to put it very mildly.
Yeah, absolutely. Fee also said, this makes me really glad to have a partner who's an EMT and an ER tech, and going to go to school to become a nurse, to know that I can trust this healthcare person to really personally care about me and advocate for me rather than having to put my faith in a stranger. He's also looking after 10 other strangers. Yeah, I mean, all right, so I think you said this when she was kind of talking about the nurses, right? So when I had both of the children that I carried in my womb, and not just in my heart, but they, the first time was almost 13 years ago, and there was zero mention of anything. Like there were no mention of resources, no mention of things that I might need to look out for. no mention of anything. And so I had to definitely be my own. Unfortunately, my mom was very much going, this isn't quite right. You probably ought to talk to your doctor about that. And then my OB herself was really great. And she explained a lot of things to me and got me connected to resources. Then when I had my son, when he was, so he's 6. So had him almost 6 years ago. And it's like, I already knew some of those resources were there, but still, I didn't have postpartum depression with my daughter. I had postpartum depression with my son. And it's like, because I didn't go through it with my daughter, I didn't know about the resources for postpartum depression with my son. But I had the experience of my daughter to say, this is not what I went through last time. Yeah. And even then, it still took my husband saying, this is not right.
You're not okay.
Yeah.
And as a married straight woman and like feeling like
6 years ago, Fee, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was like, oh, how old? Yeah. What year is it? I constantly use my husband as a sanity check, and I hope he doesn't hate me for it, because it's just like, sometimes he's like, I don't know what you're asking me this question. And then I'm like, it's because I'm not sure if it's right. And I'm lucky to have that. And it's not always something that partners can do, and it's not always something that you can necessarily find in a professional, which is kind of where you should go, probably.
Right.
Should be, yeah. And if you have the resources available, but that being the trick, is like, are the resources available? And so, and even 4 years ago, similarly, when we said, we need help with postpartum depression, so we went to a woman's practice, a psychiatric practice, and this guy told me he was making fun of me because I was sweating, and I'm like, I'm concerned about it. And he's like, what are you worried about? Everybody sweats. And I'm like, you're not really like seeing. I don't know, it's just like, it was so unhearing, and that was really one of the easier experiences. So it's and it's just that. That disconnect is wow. And I mean, I know it's frustrating. So
it is.
Yeah. See, the math works out. I
mean, all right. So here's the deal. All right, I'm gonna defend myself for just a second. Yes, he's 6. He just turned 6. My daughter is about to turn 13. And don't hate me that I can't keep them straight sometimes, even though they're a girl and a boy and so far apart. And I'm just like, look, one of them is almost. One of them is almost, and one of them is.
It's like you have to go through, and you have 4 in the house. So you have to go through all the names before you get to the right one. Then you have cats, so you have to add the cat names.
And this one is being particularly bitey today, so I don't know what's going on with him. But yeah, so Bitemark said, I tend to resist the negative thoughts by thinking about how it wouldn't be okay. I have people that depend on me. It helps, people and a dog. Yeah, absolutely. Like it's one of those things that, okay, so when I, not my postpartum depression, but the depression that I went through a few years ago, it was one of those things that I had to continually remind myself about. Well, all right, so I would be fine with it, but not everyone else would be. But the thing is, like, as much as I stuck to that, it's still something that I needed to talk to somebody about. Like, I can justify myself out of it in a given moment. And again, it wasn't one of those, it wasn't an active thought. It was just completely passive. And it was like, all right, so that's still something I need to talk to somebody about. So yes, absolutely resist the negative thoughts in any way that's helpful to you. But I would highly suggest still talking to someone about it. Even if you can't resist. And
it's not always like, I don't know, like, not to be like, no. It's not always a negative thought. Sometimes it's not always, I don't want, it's so hard to, and I think that's why it's so hard. And I think it's why it's hard for even providers to understand, because, like, I mean, I would have those conversations and they're like, do you have a plan to kill yourself? And I'm like, no, I don't.
No,
of course
right.
not. And you're like, but it's not that fucking simple.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if therapy is available to you, I think it's a really good idea. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. It's just, but your community can be a resource too. If you're a person of faith, then absolutely, that's a great place to go. And if you have squad, then you have squad on Discord, and you can be like, hey guys, this is so. I mean, whatever you can do, and makes you. One of the smartest things that one of my therapists recently said is do if it feels okay, then go out. If it makes you feel better, then and I think that was in reference to a number of things, but just not being afraid to do some, I don't know, it's
weird. But I mean, it is hard because the first question they ask is, do you have a plan? And, do you have means?
Yeah.
And it's like, no.
Do you live in a... I mean, well, then again, like they're always like, do you have means? And I'm like, I'm very creative. Understand? I have a sewing studio and like so many sharp things, and that was kind of, and that's terrible that I said that, because that was kind of what, when the second time I was hospitalized, and we were planning this with a psychiatrist that I trusted very much, and who supervised my care, and who I still continually go back to, even though I can't be a patient of hers. I probably should do. But that was the thing with Stuart, that my husband said, he was like, you have a room full of sharp things and I don't know how to keep you safe. And fair, that's fair, okay. And it was fair, because like how, he couldn't take care of me and Ben, and that was,
yeah.
And I mean, and he's going to therapy. My husband goes to therapy too, and is going to be going to therapy for a long time. So, and it's yeah, we do the, we do the thing, I guess, and it is hard. When I was looking at can I look at the thing and talk about the thing?
Yeah.
It is really hard to say. Okay. It is really hard to Fiona, thank you. It is really hard because shit is so bad right now. Oh my god, it sucks. It feels like the end of the world, and it really, really. And then you have to remember that we have a new Star Wars movie a couple of weeks, so it's okay. Just hang on till then, okay? And then
yeah,
and I can't. I mean, I can't speak further than that, because I never had an attempt. Thankfully, it was not a place that I needed to go. And so I can't, talking about it, experience of what, and the thoughts of what suicide are when you are actively suicidal as opposed to passively. I don't know what that's like. It's terrifying, honestly. Mm-hmm. And and they're two very, but they're two sides of the same coin. Mm-hmm. I think, yeah. And providers need to look at them in a way of, this is not a yes or no answer. Are you a danger to yourself? Fucking no. I mean, that's why I'm here.
Right.
I need you to tell me if I'm a danger to myself, and so there's sometimes, yeah. And that's, I think, part of understanding of hearing what patients, it's a tough job, and I'm, mm-hmm. and I would never, and providers, I often liken, the struggle that providers go through is the same struggle as teachers go through, and in these service industries where you are on the front lines with the most vulnerable people, it's fucking hard. There's very little that is, and the burnout reasons are high.
Yeah, right.
And I'm a great example. I mean, I taught for 4 years and was like, nope, I gotta go. So, and it's tough. So it's, and they're doing their best with extraordinarily limited resources in a lot of cases. So it is the same. It's the same story. Do they get, are you are you getting to see someone for 10 minutes, or are you getting to talk to somebody for an hour and a half? And is it gonna bankrupt you to do one? So, that's the things that we have to think about in the United States, at least, about before we go and find treatment. Can I afford it? Which is honestly like the most fucked up statement.
Really, it really, really is.
Right? Can I afford to get help for this? Yeah. And so, right. We're very lucky, that we're in a place where we're financially stable enough to pursue treatment. But even we're like, because what was it? Because right now we're adjusting to this new diagnosis, and it's been difficult with trying to care for my son, which is, and so that's really hard. And I'm trying to lean on my husband, but he has to work so that we have the insurance, so we can, it's just like, and he said, I asked, he said he had a conversation with HR, and they were like, here are your options. You can take a demotion and do a subsequent demotion and pay as well, or you can take FMLA, but you don't get paid at all. And I'm like, what are those words in that order said that I can take FMLA, but I don't get paid? And it's like, how is that? There's no, and the whole point of it, somebody's going to be like, oh, the whole point of it is you can have your job back when you're ready to come back. That's not how it works. What do you do in the meantime? It's the best we got, I guess, right now. And so but that is one of the things that I actively am advocating for and have spoken for in legislative settings, and said you have to do this, because if we didn't have that, and if we had family leave and we had not been worrying about money so much when I was at any point in any of this journey, would things have been different? And we know that they would have been very different, and that is good. Yes, cost of living. Ugh. It is a terrible, terrible thing, and we are one of 2 countries left among the developed nations that do not have a family leave policy, paid family leave policy, excuse me. It's us and Papua New Guinea, so guys, get on that shit. Right. I don't know what else they're doing, if they're busy right now. I mean, there are things going on. So, and that is one of the hardest arguments about this whole issue, is they're like, oh, but but this is one of those primary things, along with education, that if you do not take care of these families, then they will not survive, and there goes anything that you stood for in the first place. So the only they would realize that.
Right. The company that I work for, when I had my son, I was still working for the same company, and they didn't have any policies whatsoever, just FMLA. So I had to actually go negative on my PTO, because I didn't realize they didn't have any maternity leave policies when I was hired. And so I didn't have like short-term disability or anything like that. So I had to go negative on my PTO. And since then, they've actually, in the last couple of years, enacted a parental leave policy that covers both new fathers and new mothers, and that's great. And I'm like, okay, so we live in this country where they're relying on private companies to do the right thing. Really? Because they're so good at that. Yeah. And I'm really thankful that my company did start to offer something, and I think right now they offer 2 weeks, and I'm like, that is not enough time to heal. That's not enough time to bond either. And it's just like, it's good. It's a step in the right direction, but we need to be doing so much more for that crucial time in a child's life, and that crucial time of healing in a new mother's life, and that time of bonding in a new father's life, or in a, like, in a partner's life. It's just like, it's bullshit.
It's just bullshit.
It is.
So it's like, so I mean, we need to, so vote, first of all. And right, anything at 2 weeks.
Yeah, no.
I mean, yeah, I mean, and if you, I mean, you were. I've had a discussion lately about how, or kind of a line of thought where we have been said that pregnancy is natural, and it's like, great, that's great. You know what else is natural? A heart attack. So
yeah.
And trying to understand that pregnancy is not a disease. Pregnancy is its own. It's honestly its own thing, and so in medicine, it needs to be looked at as a whole. There are those key things of like, leaving the mom out of this, or the birth giver, out of the equation, which was the whole baby-friendly hospital thing. It's like, great, you want to let this mom room in, cool, but when she's exhausted and is like literally hallucinating, like, you have to have another option. And so these were these great grand efforts made, and it was just so dumb, and I'm so pissed off about it, because I'm like, who thought this was a good idea? Some old white dude.
Yes.
And I'm like, did they ask anybody who had actually ever had a baby? And so I mean, it all goes back to policy making and and who's
Bodies carrying babies really get marginalized in so many ways. Yeah. Yep. That's true.
And that's the phrasing is really interesting, and thank you. It's like that, and a body of color is at so much higher risk, so much higher risk.
Yeah. Well, and that's, I mean, there's a lot of stigma around maternal mental health. There's even more stigma around family dynamics if they are not a nuclear family. Like, if you aren't a man and a woman, it gets so much more complicated. And it's just like, we need to just cut the bullshit and treat people like people and help them through what they're going through. Why is that so difficult? Yeah.
Why does this family unit have to look a certain way for you to give a shit?
Right. Yeah. It's still a family unit.
Yeah. And so, I mean, so it's coming around to that. So.
Yeah. So you've talked a little bit about Hashimoto's. I know that's a new diagnosis for you. Can you just kind of explain what Hashimoto's is? And I know you've already talked about how it ties into kind of physical, emotional health, but anything else you want to share about that?
Yeah. So and the timing was so weird. So we had made plans a number of months ago, probably more than a year ago, to go to Disney World. My husband and I, for the first time, we went with a couple of friends of ours. We didn't take Ben. This was the first vacation we were going to have as married adults. We didn't go on a honeymoon. So it's kind of one of those things. But it was coming up, and in the midst of all this, and I had literally done the blood draw that revealed the antibodies that talked about it. So that was before. So we're in Florida. And I'm doing my best, and it's like, being on vacation is fun, and it was nice, but it's like, the Disney World is hard.
It is.
And so there were probably every night I felt really bad, because I'm having a breakdown. I'm at fucking Disney World, I'm having a breakdown, I'm crying on the bridge in front of the Magic Kingdom. And despite that, it was awesome. And we went to Galaxy's Edge 3 times because it was so cool. It was so cool. So we didn't understand, and one of the weird things that happened, the temperature dropped. We expected it to be in the 80s and 60s, and I was freezing. And we took blankets from the hotel, and my friend Christina's like, "This is really weird. You have to tell them about this when you get home." And oh girl. So and we turned around, and literally we got back Tuesday, and last Wednesday was when we had the appointment with the doctor, who had left us a message that said, we got your blood work, there's nothing urgent. And I'm kind of, in hindsight, I'm a little bit, I don't need that. but I understood what she meant, like, you know, like and that whole phrasing, I'm getting way off track here. That
You're
whole
fine.
phrasing about saying there's nothing urgent in receiving a set of blood work back, as opposed to, hey, it's normal, sorry you still feel like shit, you know, which no one's ever actually said sorry you feel like shit, but you know, it's just
right.
kind of it's basically that's what's underlying the whole. So yeah, that was like that phrase of, you know, was like, so we left on that phrase kind of and went on this trip and like did our best and you know and came back and they're like, hey, you know, they're like, this, you know, this is the blood work that says it looks like you have Hashimoto's disease, and that explains a lot of, you know, the things. And we went, shit. It was kind of like, and it was the weirdest feeling, really, in that moment. It was terrifying because it was, hey, we got a reason and we got a name for your thing and an outlook, and it's really positive. And I'm going, oh, and all I could think about was like, shouldn't we have known this before? Shouldn't we have known this before? Shouldn't we have known this before? You know, and it was, you know, and so I had to, and I talked to a couple of people who have, you know, had experiences in autoimmune disorder. Sorry, I'll interject that part in there. Hashimoto's disease isn't, and I didn't even explain what it was. It's an autoimmune disorder similar to things like Crohn's disease, lupus, and diabetes, that your body ends up your immune system starts attacking a part of your body, and in this case, it is the thyroid. A lot of people, it is different than hypothyroidism, and this is the difficult reason that it is to diagnose, is because they're looking at thyroid hormones in your body, and my thyroid is still fine, but the autoimmune disorder itself harms not just the thyroid but other parts of your body as well, and so that's really just, you know, what I'm feeling right now. Yeah, and so and that is the very barest minimum, and I'm probably doing a really super shitty explanation, but
good.
It's like, it's literally been less than a week, and so I'm, you know, so we're trying to integrate it into, you know, what does this mean, you know, what are the plans, and we do have a plan in place that involves both medication and change in diet, which is what I'm seeing a very frou-frou physician group right now, and they're very into like supplements and shit, and I'm like, you know what, at this point I'm just like, cool. Whatever. So it's had the strangest impact, because it has both been uplifting because we have a plan and we have a diagnosis, and there's something really bizarrely comforting in saying, I have a number on a piece of paper that says there's something wrong with me.
Right.
You know? Right. And it's that whole thing of being heard, of like, you know, it's weird. It's really weird, because I'm like, this sucks that to make this important enough for people to pay attention, it has to be a number on a piece of paper. And so I'm looking back on that a lot, and so it's a very double-sided coin, because it's that whole, this is great news and there's a direction for us to go, but also this shouldn't have been carrying on like this for so long. So if you are experiencing what seemed like very thyroid condition like problems, you should maybe consider asking them to check for the thyroid antibodies as well, because it's not a standard test, and the trouble with it is a lot of places also won't pay for it. So
right. Yeah, that's a lot of fun too.
Yeah. So and again, we're benefiting from, you know, being solidly middle class, and it's not always an option. And my best hope at this point is to make enough noise that it gets more. And so that, you know, it's like, that's just scream as loud as I can until I get
right. You know,
works for my kid, right? I mean,
yeah. That's true. Can we just throw a collective tantrum and get stuff done?
Yes, maybe. And
right.
So,
I mean, it would at least get, you know, attention.
And that's, sometimes that's the best that we can do. And so I will keep talking about it until no one else has to be here. And, until no one else has to go through what I went through. And that's kind of the idea.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I like that you brought up the fact that until you had a number on a piece of paper, you weren't necessarily taken seriously, because with things like anxiety or even postpartum depression, I mean, with mine, there was a chemical imbalance and they could fix with medication very quickly. But, with other things, sometimes there's not that number on a piece of paper where you can say, oh, I know what this is. I'll diagnose it right now from this sheet of paper that I got with your blood work. It's like, it doesn't work that way. And so it's so hard. Right. It's so hard to say, like, I'm having a really dark day today. I'm having a poor mental health day, because people don't take you seriously. They're like, you just wanted the day off. It's like, well, okay, fuck you, because I'm actually in a really dark place right now. And you're just bringing me further down into it. But there's nothing that you can say like, oh, I have a cold. Went and they tested me for the flu and it was positive. I have strep throat. The doctor said I needed to spit on the strip and they tested me. And it's like, there's not that kind of thing for a lot of mental health related diagnoses. And it's so frustrating that they don't get the attention because there isn't that number on a piece of paper.
that people also doubt you, depression, anxiety, whatever. Mm-hmm. And not only that, but even if they're not, because I fear that they are. I am afraid of what this looks like, and like right now this doesn't look like depression and anxiety and probably not an autoimmune disorder. But what does that look like anyways? Mm-hmm. So but yeah, it's that doubt and that questioning and going, how am I going to account for this? And at the same time, knowing how it is while it's going on. And so you're thinking, how dare they? So it's almost better if you're like, all right, if you think I'm bullshit, say it to my face, so at least I can slap you or something.
Yeah, right.
No, really, I'm just kidding. But I don't know. It's weird, and it's so intertwined with everything else. It's like, we're tied into working, and I am not working right now. And despite the fact that I am staying home all but 3 hours out of the day with my son, with a newly diagnosed autoimmune disease and some serious chronic conditions, I still go, boy, I really should have a job, and it's just this really super fucked up mindset and goes along with everything else. And so that's been a really weird struggle lately as well. And now I'm having this weird little addendum tail added on. Oh, well, when I feel better and the treatment starts to kick in, then I can go back and get a job. It's like, no, stop that. Don't do that. No. There's that.
Yes. Don't shit on yourself. I'm telling you.
Yeah. So, but on the other side of that coin, I have many coins. They all have two sides. Mm-hmm. So it's not dice, it's sides. Maybe it is dice.
Maybe it is. Yeah.
But while I say, I'm like, oh, when I'm feeling better, when we have whatever in place we need to have in place. I feel like I didn't have that with mental health. It was never, mm-hmm. It was more of a warning of, this is probably going to get worse, or it's like, and it's going to be, there's not that same sort of promise that there is with something on a piece of paper that mm-hmm. that we can change this number and then you can see that both on the page and, feel it, hopefully, and it's not the same with mental health. Right. It's not the same sort of expectation, and there's not going to be, as much as the depression scales trying to number it out. It's a little more complex than that.
It is.
And so it's weird because I'm thinking of, these sort of strangely negative thoughts of maybe I should go get a job, and I'll oh, I can't wait. I can start taking ballet classes again. Maybe, it's going to be really nice when I can put my studio back together and actually start sewing again. So that, those kind of things I am looking forward to, and saying those are the things that I need to make important, and not, the things that I know are going to support my mental health and support my, you need to play some more video games. Yeah. So, which has been a struggle here, and ties hopefully into our discussion that, that's a refuge. It's supposed to be a refuge. It's supposed to be a pleasure, and being unable to sit in a way that I could enjoy that for the amount of time that I wanted to was really frustrating. And it seems very indulgent in a way. It's like, oh, you can't play video games? Who fucking who? But I'm like, it also means that I can't, sit and take care of my kid the way that I want to. And I can't, I have to do too many things sitting and laying that I would like to. And it's, so, that adjusting to that is part of this as well. So
yeah. Well, that does tie into the next question perfectly, because it's kind of the next question is, how do you feel that nerd type related activities, and I use that very jokingly there because it's, you get these labels and shit, but how do you feel like that those interactions or connections, and we talked about this a little bit at the beginning, but how do you feel like those have helped your life so far?
I mean, I think that they have saved it on a number of occasions, and sometimes that involves the people that you find, the family that you find in fandom. Most of my friends who were bridesmaids at my wedding are women that I met through cosplay.
Aww.
I love that. My God, it's the cutest story. We're like, yeah, we started cosplaying together 15 years ago, and now we're all at each other's weddings. Oh, it's so cute.
That's awesome.
And I'm like, where's the show about that? So, but, and so we, and we were all at each other's weddings too, so we all had like 3 different bridesmaids dresses, and anyway.
Yeah.
It's and not like they fit or anything anymore, so it's like whatever. But
not the point.
It's, but those are the folks that I talk to first, along with my family. They're my sisters, and and then along with groups of, and these are all kind of separate, disparate fandoms, even, because I'm like, because despite the fact they do run over as well. Like, Star Wars stuff and cosplay stuff runs over delightfully. It's really nice. So all of that, having that family to kind of rely on, and so that's the primary thing about fandom that I think makes it the most valuable is family, and the community that you find. But I think in and of itself, I just asked my husband yesterday to remind me to, I have a hard time sitting and resting because I need to feel busy. But one of the ways that I can really focus in on something is to watch a TV show. And like, we've been watching Glory, and I'm like, watch The Mandalorian, it's so good. Sorry, I know it's Disney Plus, whatever. But I'm not going to say anything. I'm sorry. Just stop right now. It's really good. But, and I sat and watched, for the first time in a couple of years, I sat and watched The Empire Strikes Back yesterday. And I could not do it in one sitting. And but I still managed to watch the whole thing, and just really, and this ties into everything, because all of my favorite things, Star Wars and I'm really into Chicago Fire and Chicago PD and Chicago Med.
I love it.
It's really weird, like the things that I love stories, and so and I am a writer. I am not at all published by any means, doing my best, but like that, so much energy in that. But then and sometimes all I have the energy for is to take in somebody else's story, and that's like, and I need to take more time to be present for that, and not just put it on in the background or whatever. Well, like be present for the thing that I'm doing, which is a really good like, you know, piece of therapy advice.
Yes.
But it doesn't always feel possible, but it is something we're striving for, I feel like. And
I struggle with that too. So
yeah, it's hard to sit down because we're expected to do so much, and so part of it is retraining, you know, the way that I've been, you know, taught, and you know, the cultural things that we have put upon ourselves and each other, and so, you know, so that. And then even to like, you know, to step into the idea of stories as a way to cope is, you know, like, so Star Wars is my thing. My primary tune in Star Wars: The Old Republic is a Jedi conflict, and I'm very into like the aesthetic, I guess. How do I say the aesthetic? You know, not in like I'm literally gonna go around with my head up all. I remember a story about a guy in Ireland. But the ideas of, you know, the ideas, I'm like very into like the whole passion yet serenity and the Jedi code in that particular form, and that's like that's like another whole podcast. So, that we talk about that. But they still, and I think it's really funny because my therapist is not a nerdy person at all. Kind of like, I don't get it. But she's like super open-minded to it at the same, like, so you know, saying about that, like the Jedi code or whatever, like I, as a person with, you know, experiencing PTSD, I like when they showed it in Tony Stark, you know, and I was like, holy shit, you know, and it really stuck to me in particular because like he's a person with such privilege, and I'm like, because you have that whole idea of, I can't have this problem, I have everything I ever wanted, and it's like I'm still super fucked up though, and it's like, you know, and so to have that moment of like, cool, I can identify characters that I really otherwise would, you know, it's those threads of story that get pulled in from everywhere, and we find comfort in them, and we find ourselves in them, and those being some of the biggest things that we need. And that's why we tell stories, and that's why the Marvel movies are monsters, and that's why we keep making Star Wars.
Yes,
because they're stories about us, and they are hopefully, and they're getting more people than just stories about white people, and that's so great because because if people need to, like, nobody needs to be telling more than, I said it backwards. Anyways, you know what I mean. So it's, you know, representation in Star Wars is a super big thing, and it's so exciting right now, and it's getting better, and it looks like they're in such a good direction, and I hope it keeps up. And so we can see more of ourselves, no matter who we are, in that stuff that we love, because that makes life worth living. As much as that sounds really weird, it's like, yeah, a movie makes your life worth living. You know what? If that's cool, that's cool. Yeah, whatever works.
Well, and you like Star Wars? That's great. It's awesome, wonderful. But that is one of the things that I really love, and I have watched Star Trek since I was a kid. My grandpa used to watch it all the time. That's one of the things that I've always loved about Star Trek is the representation. Like I can picture myself in the Star Trek series, almost any of them. There are a couple that I'm just like, huh, you did what? Okay, whatever. But there's a lot of representation in Star Trek for people of color. There's a lot of representation for women. Like, it was targeted for women. Actually, the entire show was targeted for women, driven by women. The first convention for Star Trek was run by women. Like, all of these things about that culture were so women-centric that it was very easy to see myself in that. And I think that's one of the things that really did turn me off about Star Trek, is that I didn't see myself in any of the movies that I saw as a kid. Like, it wasn't there. So the ones that they're doing now, I like them much better.
Yeah. So I mean, and that's kind of funny because you're going to be like, well, clearly she was, you know, into it from like what year was I born? The second movie, because I was born in 1980. Like, I didn't start getting super into Star Wars fandom until Star Wars: The Old Republic, which was in 2012. And so it was like, I feel like I sort of came in the back door.
Yeah,
like,
right. Which is fine. That's totally fine.
Yeah, and it's like, who cares? Like, and so I did, that was really funny but that was the same thing as, like, I had not really found myself, like, in that universe. And then they offered me, the Jedi Counselor, and I was like, oh, I can take care of people? Okay. So, yeah. Oh, look, and that's the story that I love. And I don't know if anybody, I'm like, anyways, so, it was finally a place where I did see myself in it, and it was that first sort of experience of, like, I mean, and I don't know if this is more MMO thing or a BioWare thing, like, being the BioWare protagonist, which is sort of a joke, because you're like, because you're extra special, but of course you are, you're the protagonist, and it's like, it was super that, suddenly it was a story, and, like, suddenly, like, this universe just became way more huge, and I started devouring anything I could get my hands on in the EU, and so, like, and that was right before the big thing, and the thing is okay because more Star Wars is always okay, as is more Star Trek, by the way. I don't I really, I was like, all good, just more of it, this is all fine.
Yep.
But the fact that they're taking that and saying, yes, we're going to make more of it, and we're going to try to do a better job is where storytelling needs to be pointed right now. Yeah,
absolutely. I love people who are open-minded to things they don't understand. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Like, even so, I talk to my therapist about things, gaming related, Twitch related. She is like 0% gamer. Like, I don't even think she plays games on her phone. But every time I talk about it, she's like, okay, wait. I'm gonna stop you right there. I need you to explain to me what you're talking about for a second, and then we'll get into talking about it. And the lady that I saw before me, and I've told y'all plenty of times that I fired my therapist and found a better one, and I'm so glad that I did, but she had 0% interest in even caring about what I was passionate about, and I'm like, that's not good. So you gotta definitely find someone who is open-minded. If they aren't into whatever culture you're into, that's fine, as long as they're open-minded about it. I think that's really good. Feeling like you're being validated makes life worth living. Yes. Remind me later to tell you about how Star Trek is the reason for the Obama presidency. Okay, I need that story.
I think I've heard this one.
I definitely
but
need that story.
But I want to hear it again, because I'm not sure how it goes. But you can feel like they're present, and it's just like it's like all of these subjects. I wish I could think of the name that I was referring to, but. Yeah, I feel like Star Trek was so much more intentionally, like, feminist and progressive and like, actively, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm really glad. I'm really glad that Star Wars, and it's not just limited to Star Trek and Star Wars. Like, there's so many different,
whatever you're into,
comic, nerd, geek related, game related, whatever, industries. I mean, look at Overwatch. The representation in Overwatch is incredible. It's one of my favorite games. I don't have the game. It's one of my favorite games to watch on Twitch, because the representation in that game is amazing. Like, it really is. They've got bigger people, they've got smaller people, they've got every color you can imagine. They even gave one of them, a backstory that isn't this traditional man and woman relationship. And it's like, that's the kind of thing that people want. And I'm so glad to see everyone kind of going to that. Oh, here we go. Okay. Jeri Ryan gets cast on Star Trek Voyager as 7 of 9. Jeri Ryan divorces her husband. Her ex-husband, Jack, with a really strong resume and a lot of money, announces a Senate campaign in the state of Illinois in 2004. His entry in the race is enough that it is now considered a toss-up because both Jerry and Jack are public figures. Journalists push for their divorce records to be released, and a major factor in their split was Jack's desire to have sex in public locations. Jack Ryan drops out, and the GOP struggles to find a replacement. This leads to an overwhelming victory from the Democratic challenger, Barack Obama. The entire Obama presidency exists because some writers in the 90s wanted a Borg girl in their show. Wow. I like it.
Instead of saying thanks Obama, do we start saying Jerry?
Yeah. Yes.
I'm like, yes. Okay.
Oh yeah, yeah. So Overwatch also has older people, younger people, and also I think one of the older characters is even like his backstory is that he's a combat vet. So it's like there's just all these. That game in particular has a lot of different representation, and you can tell they've put in effort, and I'm so happy to see that kind of effort being put into things like games and shows and movies and all of that stuff. Like a lot of people might brush it off and say it's not important, but I am telling you that it is. It is so important.
It's the only way that we're going to allow the people whose stories they are to tell them.
Yeah.
And I mean, and you know, we're seeing that a lot with the premiere of The Mandalorian, and you know, representation in that show. And you know, there's so much discussion of it all the time, as there should be, because the discussion should not stop. And you know, and we're there was the most interesting dialogue. I don't even want to say interesting. It was a super shitty dialogue for a long time regarding Star Wars: The Old Republic, because there were not same sex, or there were straight relationships with companions only, and they changed it, and you know, and it was like this super, like, it's not perfect, but you know, like, fucking trying. So, and you know, and saying that as a cis female straight person, like, I don't have any skin in this game, sort of. So other than, like, I want the people who want to be seen, you know, and that is so important. And so, I mean, and you know, and Star Wars has a responsibility. I feel like being, you know, large franchises like these do have a responsibility, you know, to take into account, you know, all of these kinds of things that are not easy, like when we are talking about chronic illnesses, seeing those somehow, and making sure those are seen, you know, just making sure that disabilities are seen, or different abilities are seen, making sure that the picture of motherhood is changing, and showing what that really is, and not using it as a plot device. Can we stop with that? I'm over it.
Yeah.
I'm like, I have a long article somewhere in me about Padme and how, like, messed up that whole thing was, and like how I want to talk about, like, what could have happened, and you know, that's definitely a whole other thing. But it is, because women and pregnant people do not need to be a plot device either, and that's so frequent, you know, and it's just so
that's very much
that's
so.
something else to kind of, you know, and we're getting better with impression on like sitcoms now. It's weird. So I don't know why it's over there, but it's over there. They're that way. The sitcoms are that way.
Sitcoms over there. Other stuff
my
over
firefighter
here.
dramas are that way.
Yeah, right. Yeah, Fino, that's a great point. The people who brush off representation as not important are the same people who have always seen their own image represented in media. That is very, very true. Like, if you're used to seeing yourself reflected, and you have all of these people, and you've seen these different characters, and you're like, oh, I can put myself in their shoes, then yeah, you don't feel like it's important because you've always had it. But I can tell you from personal experience, like, I will love a movie more if I can understand. Okay, so my all-time favorite movie is Labyrinth. I have watched it since I was 2 years old. I watch it at least once a year now, usually more than once a year.
Brilliant.
And I watched it every day, multiple times a day, as a 2-year-old, for at least a year. Like, my mom tells the story all the time, but like the thing with that movie though is that you have this girl who goes through this journey and at the end realizes, like, I've got the power. It's me. And so people look at that movie and they're like, oh, you just like to see, you know, David Bowie or whatever. And I'm like, no, as a 2-year-old, that's not what I wanted to see. Like, that literally had zero impact on me. Or, you know, didn't you think it was scary when you were a kid? I'm like, no, this girl goes through these trials and she comes out stronger on the other side. Of course I liked the movie. Of course I still like the movie. Like, it's just, and so of all of the movies that I could have liked or that could have been my favorite or anything like that, I didn't pick one with a main character who is white, male, you know, just normal, what you see in a lot of movies from the 80s. And so it's, to me, kind of a no-brainer. But then I talk to someone else and they're like, oh, that didn't have that much of an impact. I'm like, no, really. No, really. The representation in that movie is legitimately why it's my favorite.
Mm-hmm. And you had like a girl like in a very vulnerable stage in life, and it's a very coming of age story in a very sense. But I mean, that was, you know, but having a girl in that story instead of a boy made it an entirely different film. Yeah. So and you know, when there was this whole thing where really sort of, oh man, I want to talk about this a lot. Yeah, because like the relationship, you know, there was like, they absolutely refused to make the relationship between Jareth and Sarah romantic because it was like, but there was this sort of, but then like the masquerade ball was sort of like a temptation because it's like, this is the thing that's a little bit too much adult for you and you're really interested in, but you're a little bit like, ooh, so adult, you know? Yeah. And just like, and so it's like, there's so many layers to it. It's just super great. It is absolutely in my, I can't list all my favorite movies. It's true.
Well, that is my absolute top favorite movie. Like, hands down, I could probably, you know, just start telling you the entire script if I needed to. That's one of the ones that if I had to
quote it.
Yeah, that's one of the ones that if I had to quote a movie, I could just quote it out. But it's a good, so Bite Mark said literally thousands of times. We went through several VHS tapes. I even burned out DVDs once it came out on DVD. Like, I watched it so many times that I had to buy multiple of those too. So
thank God for streaming services. Yeah. So much effort.
Yeah, no kidding. So switching gears a little bit here, you're a proponent and user of medical marijuana. So what benefits have you seen from that? And I guess just note that you're in Colorado and it's legal. So for everyone else who is not in a state, I don't remember I don't know the current number, but for everyone else who is not in a state where it is legal, blah, 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 disclaimer here, right?
Takes us all with a grain of salt. There
you go.
So this is really funny because actually, I've talked about this much. I've actually, I have not been very forthcoming with marijuana, and because there surrounds a lot of stigma surrounds it.
Oh yeah.
And especially, I don't, you know, I am afraid of that judgment of, oh my God, are you throwing around your kid all the time? I mean, number one, no. That's not, you know, but it's funny because though I think it wasn't even that long ago. My husband kind of leaned over and said to me, he's like, maybe you should just smoke a joint. That's legal now, right? And I had not used marijuana since college, which had been about a decade or so. And I thought, you know what? Why the hell not? And so this story actually gets even funnier because later on I went to see my stylist, who of course, I mean, you talk to your stylist, like, the stylist is also your therapist. Let's be very, very honest with ourselves. We don't pay stylists or therapists enough, so you know, it's gonna be fine. But you know, so yeah, I was talking about, and so I mentioned it that my husband had said this, and like we had been struggling with mental health medication, as we had been for a long time, of course, and just going through some things, and that was what he said. He's like, and Nicole's like, yeah, cool. After I'm done cutting your hair, let's go. I'll go buy you a joint. Across this place across the street. And I'm like, you're gonna what? And and it was the first time that I had been in a dispensary, and so, and not, and since then I have become a purchaser on my own, and that sounds so childish. But I am so at the beginning of knowing the amounts of research that are available and becoming available, because legality is opening up for marijuana users and people who want to test and all of these things. It's becoming a lot easier here in Colorado, mm-hmm. and so it's easier to do like, I'm gonna test this pumpkin pie. And so it is, a lot of it is like, a lot of it is figuring out what's working for me, and there's those information to sift through. It's sort of in a way similarly to the way that we talk about other medications, is like, this is the benefit, here are the possible side effects, here's mm-hmm. This other things, and so we can speak about marijuana that way as well. And so so we see those benefits, like, and you have and you're of all of the compounds that are involved, and there's a lot of research to do, and it's very interesting. And it probably makes more sense if you have a degree in biology, which I do not have. But it is still, there's excellent coverage of it, by journalists who are also users, and so things that are. It is so much more legitimate than people sort of imagine, like, as it has been demonstrated culturally. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot there. There's so much there to unpack. But the benefits that I've seen from it are, it is a good pain management strategy when you find the strains and combinations kind of that work for you. It is a little bit of an experimentation. But it's fun experimentation, I guess. Right.
Right.
I mean, that is entirely. People want to feel. The CBD is very popular, of course, and has to be used in a way that's typically in a lot larger companies trying to use it in, which is when they have studied it, they've used these smaller concentrations, and they're like, well, it's not really showing things up, and it's like, no, because you have to really, yeah. So things like that. The fact that this is one of those very arduous points that it is considered it is a safer substance than a lot of medications that I have. It is a safer substance than the benzodiazepines that I take as well, and mm-hmm. It is. At this point in time now, less sort of regulated. I don't want to say less, but differently regulated than it is a Schedule I drug. And it doesn't fit in the same category as those. It's not the same myth of you can't get addicted, but the way that the dependencies are different, and mm-hmm. they can be mitigated for, as opposed to, but we see the same level of relief that we're seeing with opioids, which is obviously a huge problem. And, despite the benefits, the risks are outweighing the benefits very, very greatly. And we don't see that risk-benefit difference in marijuana as much. Mm-hmm. And I had someone say to me once that they knew about someone, a mom, who had been a heroin user and cocaine user, and very destructive, very, very, very damaging illegal drugs that are dangerous on so many different levels. And after she had her baby, the way that she managed her mental health was using marijuana, and she, of course, and and it was the whole argument of like, it's this or methamphetamines. I mean, you know, what, you know, can we, this is not being a bad parent. This is being a parent who is managing her health in a way, you know, and it does involve in a way that is safe. You know, you need a locked container in a place safe. That is a way you're not smoking in the house. You're not, if smoking is what you're doing, you know, you're responsible about vaping. Make sure that you get your vape products from, you know, authorized retailers, because we don't need more of that. That fortunately is another thing that's really that's not as much of a concern in states where cannabis is legal, so we don't have to worry as much about people trying to get counterfeit products, because that's all there is. And, so, you know, it's like anything else, and a lot of the times I can, you know, do I want to take an Ativan and then drive I would not do that, and so I am not going to, you know, smoke a joint and then drive a car. You know, it's the you know, I'm still behaving responsibly, you know, as I would the same way I would with alcohol. And I can't smoke a whole joint by myself. So yeah, that's and I would like it to be for more people. I would like to not be I would like to not be as embarrassed as I am about like hanging out outside my garage and wondering which looking at me. Yeah. So, and you know, not feeling like I have not had to defend myself about it. You know, even to, you know, like my in-laws who are from and are very conservative, and they're just like, you do what you have to do to take care of yourself. So I've had some really positive things, but I definitely, so it's a little nerve-wracking because like, well, we treated this out a lot, and now Beverly smokes pot and she has a kid. What? Oh. so I'm trying to, you know, but I don't think that's the experience that I'm going to have. And I want it to be available as something that you know, parents need, and a safe way to, you know, kind of assist in managing your mental health if that's the right thing for you to do. So, and you know, and having to, my husband does not appreciate the particular pungence in that way. So, you know, so it's like I'm trying really hard to, you know, be conscientious of, you know, of my family's needs as well, and still, but it does help. I mean, it's a way to unwind. You do not, you can feel the effects of medical marijuana. You can use cannabis in microdosing ways, so that you are able to kind of, you know, manage whatever it is that you need to manage. You know, whether it be pain or you know, anxiety or depression, or, you know, and not, you know, you don't have to be stoned out of your mind all the time. If you want to, that's cool. Like, that's fine. So it's just, if that works for you, that's, you know, and it's a huge privilege to be able to have, you know, accessibility to this, and I cannot, you know, go without saying that people who have been incarcerated for nonviolent marijuana-related offenses need to go. Like, they need to go home a lot. Yeah. and those are disproportionately people of color, of course, and so they're. But that to me is like, it's such an easy problem to fix. It's just like, just write the bill, guys. Yeah. You know, and so I support that entirely, and I think that, you know, and we're in a bit of an unfair time because a lot of white people are benefiting from the sale of marijuana, where it has been a you know, reason for an excuse for racism in you know, the war on drugs was it was a mess. So, you know, those things need to be identified and dealt with it as well. And that is a responsibility that I have as a consumer, to make sure that hopefully that's gonna, continue to go forward. So it's on my list of things for advocacy. So
yeah,
and hopefully it's gonna be resolved soon, and those people can be with their families as they deserve to be.
Absolutely. Yeah, the whole war on drugs, I mean, it was about racism. That's just what it was about. Mm-hmm. It's if anyone has not looked into the history of how that started, I urge you to go and look up the story. I'll have to find a link to it. It's really sad and ridiculous. And just ridiculous. That's the nicest word that I have for it. Adam Ruins Everything did a piece on it. Ooh, I have not seen that. I'll have to check that out. But yeah, I mean, to me, someone who can responsibly use marijuana, whether it's medical or recreational, I feel like it's equivalent, or maybe even less, causes less impairment than alcohol. And it's like, if you're gonna go and drink a 6-pack, or you're gonna go and smoke a joint, like, which one's more likely to get you into an accident? And I mean,
yeah, and I mean, that's a hard. Be intoxicated at all. Do not drive a motor vehicle.
Right.
And
right.
That's one of the things that's like has to be reemphasized. It's like these are still. Everybody okay over there?
Yeah, she started coughing.
I started dying.
Good night.
Good night.
She walked up to say goodnight, and then just all of a sudden had like this coughing fit. She's okay.
I forgot what I was talking about. That's okay.
Driving while impaired, don't do it, basically.
Yeah, don't do that. Don't do a lot of things while you're impaired.
Yeah.
And make a plan to take care of yourself safely.
And that goes with, I mean, you mentioned it already, but that goes with a lot of medications just in general. Like, know how they affect you. Even some over-the-counter stuff can really have an impact on your ability to operate a car. Like, you just have to understand, you have to be a responsible person. Just be a responsible... Ugh. I feel like so many of the things around marijuana in particular are just, don't be an idiot. Like,
yeah, they seem very, very sort of obvious things. Like, yeah, don't be a dick, and it's okay.
Mm-hmm. Pretty much.
But it is. There's like, it's a little bit of a, because it's a conversation that I'm gonna have with somebody at some point, I feel like, and and have to justify it, and that's hard.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I'm sure you don't have to justify it. It's that's the thing that you're doing, and but yeah, it's so there's a lot of complicated that goes with it too, and I don't know, and I'm, like I said, I'm still very, very new to this experience. I've done my own private research and not like big research that I can say, oh well,
right,
reading articles and so. But yeah, it's an option, and I also don't at all begrudge the fact that we pay like almost 50% tax on recreational marijuana, because schools are eventually hopefully going to see some money from that. So
yeah,
it does usually come with a responsibility than a lot of other industries have when they have come into being. So
yeah, they need to tax cigarettes the same way, and alcohol, honestly, but that's a whole other
it's a whole other show. It's
a whole other thing. All right, so if you could wave a magic wand and eliminate a common opinion or misconception, theory, etc., around mental illness or talking about mental health in general, what would it be?
I think it would be, and I was trying to figure out how to phrase this. I think it would be that I think just the overall sort of negative connotation with it. And I read an article some sort of similar things about autism. I really honestly believe that mental health wise, everyone is living on that spectrum of, are you in good mental health? Is there, anybody at any time can be back forth between, good and bad mental health, and so it's a very, we say these numbers are so much higher, and I think it's because we understand that it's part of the human experience is this struggle and this stress is a little bit of part of the human experience, and sometimes it dips too far, down than it should, and the phrasing of it is always like 90% of people at some point in their lives experience they will have an experience with mental health complications, and it's almost like it feels a little stupid being like, well, most people will. Well, why would it be just like, it's probably everybody.
Yeah.
And it's probably, it's probably not. And we call it by so many different names. Throughout history, it has been called by so many different names. And just to accept that it's part of being a person to feel poorly sometimes, and to have those experiences, however they unfold for each person, and treat it the same way as we do as we do physical health, in that the number on the page, let's get past the number on the page and understand that the person who's talking to you. And so this falls into mental health and autoimmune diseases and chronic illnesses. A lot of this all falls into the same thing, that just believe in what I say, and hear me when I'm speaking, and that I'm not I'm not being a drama queen. And I've heard the phrase, that it's not just in my head, but even if it is, here that I am suffering, and I want my suffering eased, and that hear that's the cry from patients, with whatever is ailing them, that we just want to feel better, and that's it, and it's not anything but we want to feel better.
Yeah. I mean, everyone has mental health, right? It's just a matter of, if this is the darkest of dark and this is the brightest of bright days, like, where are you on your mental health scale on any given day? Grandpa dies, which is maybe pretty soon for me, but I'm going to be down here. But then over the next couple of days, I might be back up here. I could fall anywhere on that spectrum. Everyone has that mental health. Everyone. It's a matter of where you fall on the scale on any given day, and that can change in an instant. And some people, this scale isn't my darkest dark, might not be your darkest dark. My brightest bright might not be your brightest bright. Your brightest bright may be way up here. Your brightest bright may be right here. But that scale is just there for everyone. And I agree. I wish that was something that people understood. And it's like, okay, so mental health, you can say, well, it's just all in your head. Well, yeah, it's mental health. That's
yeah, right. You're just like, well, kind of, yeah.
Where do you think mental health is? It's not in my liver.
Maybe the kidneys, the cockles.
Yeah, right. Check. Did you check your thyroid? see if that's, see if you can talk to your depression through your thyroid and get it worked out. No, okay, good job. Does anyone have anything they want to ask our guest? And then while we're getting any questions in here about Hashimoto's, or about PTSD, or depression, or suicidal ideation, or anything that we've talked about a lot here tonight. So any questions while we're getting those, do you have anything you want to throw out there as far as resources or sites or recommendations, or something we didn't cover that you want to talk about? I'll just kind of open up the floor and give it over to you.
I was going to add, because I can't seem to type as I'm talking, Postpartum Support International is one organization that connects patients directly to caregivers who have maternal mental health experience. I can't remember the name.
Is it postpartum.net? Is that the right one?
There is another organization as well called 2020 Moms. For the last 3 years, I've been going to Washington in May in order to walk the same halls that everyone else does when they have to go lobby for stuff. So here's a really random story at the very end of it. So the first year that I went, we saw Carole King walking down the halls of the building where the representative, and there was a group of about 3 of us moms who were there to advocate for maternal mental health and maternal mortality rates. And we kind of watched her walk by, and somebody was like, "That Carole King," and she just turns around. She's got a backpack on, like she's like, whatever, and she's got her backpack on. She turns. Everybody's at a lobby, and and none of us had the presence of mind to go like, "Somebody get a selfie," But it was they have done a lot of good work. They have been personally supportive of a lot of things. My being able to attend, which is difficult when you have a kid and you have to leave the kid. Just trying to. So advocacy is hard. It costs money. It's one of the tricky things. So. If you're in a position to and you can donate towards folks who are advocating or directly with causes, these things, we are working very hard on all of these organizations, as well as state organizations in the state of Colorado, that we are doing our best to focus on birth givers as human beings first, and in Colorado specifically, writing legislation that is going to affect them. We just last year passed a bill that is going to move along kind of the backlog investigations of maternal deaths in the last 3 years. It used to have to be a 3-year stretch from when the issue happened and until they start the investigation, because that statute of limitations on medical malpractice. So it's a little weird. But this does step up that process, hopefully without issues on the side of those folks who do need to pursue medical malpractice under this circumstance. And I think people who are smarter than me and know that. So, but it does open us up to looking at that research and seeing what has been happening within the most recent years that are these threads that are causing maternal deaths, and how are we going to fix it most of all, and so along with that, we say, along with maternal mortality, we also talk about the cases of maternal morbidity, which are the birth givers who live through incredible trauma, and so we need to speak for both the living and the dead in this particular area. They all need to be spoken for, and as well as their families. And being on one side of that coin, since we're going to add to the collection of coins.
I think at this point it needs to be like a 20-sided die.
Yeah, it's like, yes, that. It's the same. Yeah, it's I survived, and so it's my obligation to make sure that these women's stories are told as well. These birth givers and pregnant people and moms and dads and families and partners, and everybody who is. Because we're gonna say it takes a village, and it does, and most of the village also needs therapy.
Yeah, I like that. Oh my God, I love that. It takes a village, and most of the village also needs therapy. I am stealing that. I am stealing that. Oh, that was great. Well, Fiona said, I just want to say thank you for being here because your mannerisms are wonderful and relatable. And I enjoyed spending my evening listening and chatting with you. And then Bite Mark said, I feel like the discussion has been really thorough and every time I had a question it was answered pretty quickly. There you go. Yay. I
really feel like sometimes we brush aside conversations about what other people are going through. And damn if we aren't missing some major opportunities to connect and see that we're all more alike than we think. We all struggle at different points in our lives for sure. I know I definitely have. And we can choose to be our own islands and kind of isolate and not talk about it, or we can build ships that carry us and others to visit and share and support one another. My goal with the Words to Your Mother podcast is to hold relatable conversations in a supportive, non-judgmental environment, which is what I hope you feel like we did here. I aim to own my own story with the understanding that well-being is a lifelong journey and that we're all more than our challenges and diagnoses. Until next time, I hope you are able to own your own story, love yourself, and thrive as you become more mentally stable, emotionally healthy, and physically well with each passing day. And don't forget, the only normal people are the ones you don't know very well.